A man sits in silence after dinner, staring at the floor while his wife clears the table. She asks what's wrong. He hesitates. His mind is heavy with failures at work, debts stacking up, and the nagging voice that tells him he's falling short. The easy path would be to unload it all, to spill every fear and doubt, hoping she'll understand. But here's the truth: when a man reveals every weakness, he doesn't always find comfort. Sometimes he loses respect. What he thought would bring closeness instead creates distance. This isn't about lying or hiding, it's about strength. The Stoics taught that not every battle is meant to be shared. Some struggles are your private crucible, the fire that tempers your character. Marcus Aurelius carried the weight of an empire, but confided only in his journal. Epictetus endured slavery and pain, but never begged for pity. They knew what modern men often forget: self-mastery requires discretion. What you keep to yourself doesn't make you dishonest. It makes you steady, reliable, and strong. Today we're going to explore 8 things a man must guard in silence. Not to manipulate women, not to play games, but to live with dignity, respect, and unshakable strength. Part 1: Weaknesses. Every man carries weaknesses, fears, insecurities, and hidden doubts. The Stoics never denied this truth. In fact, they insisted that weakness is part of the human condition. But what separates a Stoic man from the rest is not whether he feels weak, but how he responds to it. The world often tells men to open up about everything, to put their vulnerabilities on display. And while there's a time for honesty, the Stoics remind us that not all battles belong in the open. When you hand over your rawest insecurities to others, especially to the woman closest to you, you risk losing the very respect that holds the relationship together. Think about Marcus Aurelius. He was an emperor facing plagues, wars, and betrayals. Imagine if he had walked into the Senate saying, "I'm terrified, I don't know what to do." His empire would have collapsed overnight. Instead, he poured his fears into his private meditations, using them as fuel to sharpen his character. His weaknesses became his teachers, but only because he chose to wrestle with them privately rather than make them everyone else's burden. That doesn't mean you pretend to be invincible. It means you choose strength over pity. You face hardship with composure, not because you feel no pain, but because you know revealing every wound can drain the confidence others place in you. A man who constantly complains about his hardships isn't admired, he's pitied. And pity rarely inspires love, respect, or trust. Picture 2 men at work. Both are under pressure. One vents to everyone about how unfair things are. The other keeps calm, quietly doing what he can control. Who do you think others look up to? The second man. Not because he feels less fear, but because he doesn't let his weakness spill out uncontrolled. His silence becomes strength. In relationships, this matters even more. A woman may love you deeply, but love without respect cannot last. When she sees you crumble at every obstacle, when every fear becomes her burden, she may comfort you, but in her heart a seed of doubt is planted. She wonders, can this man protect me, guide me, and stand firm when life gets hard? The Stoic path is not about coldness, it's about resilience. You acknowledge weakness, but you don't indulge it. You examine it rationally. Why do I feel this fear? What belief makes me think this pain is unbearable? By challenging those beliefs, you grow. Epictetus put it simply: we suffer not from events, but from our judgment about them. Weakness, then, is not an enemy to hide in shame, it's raw material for strength. The Stoic man treats his private struggles as a training ground. He carries them like weights in a gym, using the resistance to build fortitude. And when he does share, he shares lessons, not helplessness. Instead of saying, "I'm lost," he says, "Here's what I faced and here's what I learned." There's a difference between vulnerability that inspires connection and vulnerability that erodes respect. Stoicism teaches men to know that difference. Share your heart, yes, but never dump your weaknesses in search of pity. Bear them with dignity and transform them into wisdom. A man who does this becomes a pillar, not because he never feels weak, but because he refuses to let weakness define him. His silence is not emptiness, it's composure. And in that composure, others, especially the woman beside him, see not a boy seeking comfort, but a man forged in strength. Part 2: Mistakes. Every man makes mistakes. To live is to stumble, to misjudge, to take a wrong step. The Stoics knew this well. Seneca admitted often in his letters that he still fell short of his ideals. Marcus Aurelius wrote reminders to himself, not because he had mastered life, but because he was still learning. Yet the Stoic man handles mistakes differently than most. He owns them, privately learns from them, and transforms them into stepping stones toward wisdom. In today's world, it has become fashionable to wear every mistake like a badge, to confess it all in search of validation. Social media is filled with men oversharing, telling stories of their failures, hoping someone will applaud their honesty. But Stoicism reminds us that not every misstep needs an audience. Some lessons belong in your private journal, not on your partner's shoulders. Imagine a man who forgets an important detail at work and his project collapses. If he runs home and unloads every bit of his blunder onto his wife, she may feel sympathy, but she may also begin to see him as careless or incompetent. Over time, repeated confessions of mistakes can chip away at respect. She may love him, but does she trust his judgment? That trust is fragile and once broken, hard to rebuild. The Stoics took a different approach. Epictetus taught that mistakes are not proof of weakness, but opportunities for growth. They are signals pointing to where your reasoning or discipline failed. Instead of broadcasting them, the Stoic examines them in silence. Where did I misjudge? What belief led me astray? How can I do better next time? The value is not in confessing, but in correcting. This doesn't mean denial. A Stoic doesn't pretend mistakes never happen. He acknowledges them honestly, but primarily to himself. He accepts responsibility without wallowing. The difference between a boy and a man is this: a boy blames others or seeks pity for his blunders, while a man quietly takes ownership and works to improve. Think about pilots or surgeons. Their professions leave no room for excuses. If they make an error, they don't go on stage begging for sympathy. They analyze, adjust, and move forward. Respect comes not from avoiding mistakes entirely, but from showing discipline in how you respond. In relationships, the same principle applies. A woman doesn't need to know every detail of your errors. What she needs is the assurance that you are capable of handling them. If you're late on a payment, handle it. If you mess up at work, learn from it. Don't dump the raw mistake on her. Instead, share the growth that came out of it. That way, she sees you as resilient and resourceful, not careless. The Stoics also warned against repeating the same errors. Seneca said to stumble twice against the same stone is a disgrace. A mistake can be forgiven once, but if you do not learn, it becomes a flaw in your character. The Stoic man studies his failures so carefully that he does not trip over the same stone again. And here's the paradox: when you stop confessing every little mistake, you actually grow more trustworthy. Why? Because your actions show the lesson learned. You no longer need words to prove it. Respect is restored not by apology alone, but by changed behavior. So what should a man hide? Not the fact that he's imperfect, we all are, but the unprocessed, unrefined version of his errors. Don't present your mistakes as wounds in need of comfort. Present them later as lessons that made you stronger. In this way, mistakes cease to define you. They become your teachers, your forge, your path toward wisdom. And when the woman beside you sees not a man drowning in errors, but one who quietly learns and grows, she sees what the Stoics always valued: a man of character. Part 3: Dreams. Every man carries dreams, visions of what he hopes to achieve, places he wants to go, the legacy he longs to leave. Dreams are powerful. They give direction, inspire action, and keep us moving forward when life feels heavy. But the Stoics warned us, be cautious about how, when, and with whom you share them. Picture a young man sitting across from his girlfriend, full of excitement. He tells her every detail of his ambitious plans, how he'll start a business, retire early, buy a house on the coast. At first she smiles, but over time she notices that his words far outnumber his actions. His dreams, once inspiring, start to feel like empty talk. Instead of admiration, doubt creeps in. This is why Stoicism teaches restraint. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself often, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. In other words, stop talking, start doing. Dreams should be lived, not performed. A Stoic man guards his ambitions carefully, not out of secrecy, but out of discipline. He understands that announcing every goal creates a false sense of accomplishment. Psychologists today call it social reality. When you tell others your dream, your brain rewards you with a hit of pride, making you feel like you've already achieved something. But the Stoic knows better. Talking doesn't make progress. Action does. History is full of men who kept their visions close to the chest. Think of George Washington. Before he became the first U.S. president, he dreamed of independence for the colonies. But he didn't boast about it at dinner tables. He worked tirelessly in the field leading soldiers, enduring loss after loss, until victory was finally within reach. His dreams spoke not through words but through discipline. In relationships, dreams carry even more weight. A man who shares every fantasy, every plan, every imagined victory, risks losing credibility. A woman may love ambition, but she respects results. If she constantly hears promises with little proof, her confidence in you fades. But when you guard your dreams, work on them quietly, and let your achievements reveal themselves in time, you create admiration. This doesn't mean never discussing goals. The Stoic isn't mute. He may share his aspirations once they've taken root, once action is underway. But he never relies on external validation to fuel his fire. His compass is internal. His motivation comes from duty discipline and the satisfaction of living in alignment with his values. Epictetus once said, "Don't explain your philosophy, embody it." The same is true of dreams. Don't sell them as promises, build them as realities. And here's the deeper Stoic insight: even dreams must be kept in proportion. The Stoics distrusted illusions and fantasies detached from reality. A man who dreams only of wealth or fame is chasing shadows. True Stoic dreams are rooted in virtue, becoming wiser, braver, more just. External achievements may come, but they are secondary. What matters is whether your dream shapes you into a better man. So when it comes to women, a Stoic man hides his dreams not because he lacks ambition, but because he respects the weight of words. He lets his actions speak. And when he does share, he shares from a place of reality, not fantasy. To guard your dreams is to guard your power. To reveal them too soon is to invite judgment, distraction, and even ridicule. Keep them close, water them with discipline, and let the fruit be seen in time. Then when others, including the woman beside you, see the results, they'll respect. Not just what you achieved, but the quiet strength it took to get there. Part 4, feelings. Feelings are the most misunderstood part of Stoicism. Many think a Stoic man feels nothing like a stone statue. That's not true. The Stoics didn't deny emotions, they studied them, respected them, and learned to master them. The danger isn't in having feelings, it's in letting them spill out recklessly, especially in ways that weaken trust and respect. Imagine a man who lets every emotion pour out the moment it strikes him. When he's angry, he yells. When he's sad, he sulks. When he's anxious, he unloads all of it onto his partner. At first, she may comfort him, but over time, she begins to wonder, if this man is a storm inside, how can he guide us through life's real storms? The Stoics believe that emotions are signals, not commands. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." He didn't tell himself not to feel. He reminded himself that feelings must be managed, not obeyed. Consider the difference between two men. One receives bad news and immediately lashes out, blaming everyone around him. The other feels the same surge of anger, but pauses, breathes, and chooses his response carefully. Which man commands respect? Clearly the second. Not because he feels less, but because he channels his emotions instead of being enslaved by them. In relationships, this principle becomes crucial. A woman values emotional connection, but she also values composure. She doesn't want a man who is emotionally dead, but neither does she admire one who collapses under every wave of feeling. What she longs for is balance, a man who can acknowledge his emotions without being ruled by them. This is where discretion matters. A Stoic man doesn't dump every flicker of emotion onto his partner. He doesn't mask everything either. Instead, he filters. He asks, will sharing this improve our bond, or will it burden her unnecessarily? He chooses to express feelings in ways that build respect and trust, not diminish them. Think of Epictetus, who endured poverty and slavery. He surely felt anger and despair at times, yet he didn't let those emotions master him. Instead, he turned them into fuel for wisdom, teaching his students that no one can control your inner life unless you hand it over. Modern psychology agrees. Emotional intelligence isn't about suppression, it's about awareness. It's the ability to recognize what you feel, understand why, and decide how best to respond. The Stoics practiced this centuries before the term existed. Here's the paradox: when you control your emotions, people feel safer around you. They know you won't erupt unpredictably. They trust that your presence brings calm rather than chaos. And in love, this trust deepens respect. A practical example: imagine your partner is stressed about money. If you panic with her, you double the storm. But if you acknowledge the fear and respond with steady assurance, "We'll handle this one step at a time." You don't just calm her, you strengthen the bond. You become her anchor, not her echo. So what must a man hide? Not all feelings forever, but the raw, unfiltered flood. The emotions that belong first in reflection, not in reaction. Journal them. Meditate on them. Refine them into wisdom before you share. By doing this, you show her and the world that you are not a prisoner of emotion. You are a man guided by reason, steadied by virtue, and capable of love that is deep yet disciplined. In the end, a Stoic man doesn't hide feelings to be cold. He guards them until they are tempered like steel and fire, so that when he reveals them, they come not as weakness, but as strength. Part 5: Secrets. Every man carries secrets, pieces of his past, private thoughts, or unfinished battles that live only in his mind. The question is not whether to have secrets, but how to handle them. The Stoics believe that privacy is not shameful. In fact, it is essential for dignity and self-mastery. Think about it this way. Imagine a man who reveals everything about himself to his partner. The awkward mistakes of his youth, every private doubt, every dark impulse. At first, she might see it as honesty, but eventually the flood of raw disclosure becomes too much. Instead of building closeness, it erodes respect. Not because she doesn't love him, but because constant exposure removes the mystery and strength that should surround a man. The Stoics warned against careless speech. Epictetus told his students, "Be silent for the most part," or if you speak, say only what is necessary. This wasn't about lying. It was about recognizing that some parts of your inner world belong only to you. They are your crucible, your training ground. To throw them out carelessly is to weaken yourself. Consider Marcus Aurelius. His meditations were never meant for public eyes. They were his private thoughts, his own conversations with himself. They were filled with doubts, frustrations, even shame. But he kept them guarded not because he was dishonest, but because those reflections were tools for his growth. Had he shouted them out to the Senate, he would have appeared weak. By keeping them private, he turned them into wisdom. In modern life, secrets still matter. Think of leaders, CEOs, or even fathers. If every private fear or mistake were broadcast, followers would lose confidence. A man must be trustworthy, not because he reveals all, but because he knows what should remain unsaid. In relationships, discretion becomes even more important. A woman values honesty, yes, but she also values strength. If you treat her like a diary, dumping every unprocessed thought or every piece of confidential information from others, she may begin to wonder if you can be trusted. Real respect comes from balance, being honest when it matters, but guarding what must remain sacred. This doesn't mean deceiving your partner. Stoicism never excuses dishonesty. It means recognizing that not every detail of your inner life has to be spoken aloud. A Stoic man protects his own dignity and also the dignity of others by keeping certain matters private. Cicero once said, "The most sacred thing in the world is the human soul. Within that soul are memories, lessons, and inner dialogues that shape us. To treat them carelessly is to disrespect yourself." Consider an everyday example. A man overhears something in confidence at work. He rushes home and tells his partner, thinking it harmless. Later, she repeats it and trust is broken. The root of the problem: he failed to guard what was not his to share. By contrast, the Stoic man remains silent, proving through action that his word can be trusted. Secrets, then, are not about shame. They are about boundaries. They are reminders that a man's inner world is sacred ground. A woman may love you, but she does not need to know everything to respect you. What she truly wants is a man who knows when to speak and when to keep silent. A Stoic man hides not to deceive but to protect. Protect his dignity. Protect the trust placed in him. Protect the sacredness of his soul. And in doing so, he shows the world and his partner that silence itself can be a form of strength. Part 6: Pains. Pain is the one experience every human shares. Physical pain, emotional pain, the sting of disappointment, the ache of loss, no one escapes it. The question is not if pain will come, but how we respond when it does. For the Stoic man, the answer is simple yet demanding. Endure it with dignity and never make it someone else's burden. Picture two men facing hardship. One complains constantly his back hurts, his job is unfair, his life is too heavy. He shares every ache with his partner, seeking sympathy at every turn. At first she comforts him, but over time his endless lamenting wears her down. Instead of seeing him as strong, she begins to see him as fragile. His pain becomes her burden and respect begins to fade. The other man feels pain just as deeply, but he carries it differently. He acknowledges it, but he doesn't advertise it. He bears it quietly, treating it as a challenge to overcome rather than a reason to collapse. And when he does speak of it, he does so with perspective. Yes, this was hard, but here's what I learned. Instead of pity, he earns admiration. The Stoics taught that pain is a training ground. Seneca wrote, "Fire tests gold and misfortune tests brave men." To endure pain with patience is not weakness, it is proof of strength. Marcus Aurelius faced chronic illness and constant war, yet in his writings he reminded himself to meet pain with calm. If it is endurable, then endure it. If it is not, then it will soon end. Modern psychology backs this up. Complaining magnifies suffering, while reframing pain as a challenge builds resilience. When you broadcast every ache, it grows larger in your mind and in the eyes of others. But when you carry it with composure, it shrinks into perspective. This doesn't mean denial. Stoicism never taught men to ignore medical problems or bury trauma. It taught them to approach pain with reason. If something can be fixed, fix it. If it cannot, endure it. Either way, whining about it only adds to the burden. In relationships, this matters deeply. A woman wants to feel safe with her partner. If every headache, every frustration, every hardship reduces him to self-pity, she begins to wonder if he cannot handle his own pain. How will he handle life's bigger storms? But if he endures quietly, showing courage without demanding constant reassurance, her respect deepens. Think of soldiers returning from battle. Many of them carry unimaginable wounds. Yet the ones most admired are not those who constantly speak of their suffering, but those who bear it with quiet dignity. Their pain is real, but their composure makes them pillars others lean on. The Stoic man doesn't hide pain to be cold. He hides it because he understands its power to shape him. Pain is not just something to survive, it's something to grow from. When faced with difficulty, he asks, "What lesson does this pain carry? How can it make me stronger, wiser, more resilient?" In doing so, he transforms suffering into strength. So what should a man hide from a woman? Not that he ever feels pain, she will see it in his life, but the raw, unfiltered display of every struggle. He hides the constant groaning, the endless complaining, the indulgence in self-pity. Instead, he shows her courage, perspective, and growth. Pain is universal, but strength in pain is rare. A Stoic man endures, learns, and carries on not because he feels less, but because he chooses to master what he feels. And in that choice, he earns not just respect from others, but respect from himself. Part 7, Pleasures. If pain tests a man's strength, pleasure tests his discipline. The Stoics warned that unchecked pleasure can be just as destructive as suffering. Pain can break you from the outside, but pleasure can rot you from the inside if you let it control you. Picture a man who indulges in every desire, whether it's endless nights of drinking, chasing approval online, or spending recklessly on things he doesn't need. At first it feels thrilling, but slowly the pleasure owns him. His health declines, his finances crumble, and his partner begins to see him as irresponsible, even childish. What was meant to bring happiness leaves only emptiness. Now contrast that with a man who enjoys pleasure, but with balance. He can sip a glass of wine without needing the whole bottle. He can enjoy intimacy without becoming a slave to lust. He can buy nice things, but he doesn't let materialism dictate his worth. This man doesn't reject pleasure, he masters it. And because he is not ruled by it, he remains respected and admired. The Stoics believe pleasure is not evil. Epictetus said it best. Freedom is not procured by a full enjoyment of what is desired, but by controlling the desire. In other words, true freedom isn't found in chasing pleasure endlessly, it's found in the ability to say no. Marcus Aurelius also reminded himself to beware of luxury. As emperor, he could have drowned in indulgence. Yet he lives simply sleeping on a hard bed during military campaigns, reminding himself that comfort is optional, but virtue is necessary. In relationships, a man's relationship with pleasure matters more than many realize. A woman may enjoy moments of indulgence with her partner, but she also watches closely. Does he control his desires, or do they control him? A man who hides nothing, who openly flaunts every indulgence, risks being seen as weak even if he thinks he's showing confidence. A Stoic man instead is discreet. He guards his pleasures, moderates them, and never lets them become the center of his life. Take, for example, two husbands. One spends every spare dollar on new gadgets, nights out, or gambling. He tells his wife about every purchase, every indulgence, almost bragging. She doesn't admire him, she worries. The other husband also enjoys life, but within reason. He keeps discipline over his spending and doesn't make his pleasures her problem. She sees him as steady, reliable, someone she can trust. The Stoic approach is not asceticism. It doesn't mean rejecting joy. Life offers pleasure, good food, laughter with friends, intimacy, even simple comforts. The Stoic enjoys these things but never depends on them for happiness. His contentment comes from within, from virtue and reason, not from the fleeting thrill of indulgence. And this is what he hides from a woman, not all pleasure itself, but the excess. He doesn't brag about indulgences or make them the foundation of his life. He shows her instead that he can enjoy without being consumed. Modern society constantly tells men to chase pleasure, buy more experience, more, consume more. But Stoicism flips the script. Real power is not in taking everything you want, but in choosing wisely what you allow yourself to have. So when it comes to pleasures, the Stoic man shows restraint. He hides the reckless cravings, the compulsions, the addictions. What he reveals is balance, control, and gratitude. Because in the end, it's not about how much you enjoy. It's about whether you remain master of yourself while enjoying. That's the kind of strength that earns respect from a partner, from others, and most importantly, from yourself. Part 8. Love. Love is perhaps the most powerful and dangerous emotion a man can experience. It can lift him to his highest self or blind him and strip him of his strength. The Stoics never rejected love, but they warned it must be guided by reason, not consumed by attachment. A Stoic man hides certain aspects of love not to be cold or deceptive, but to keep love pure, balanced, and worthy of respect. Consider the man who loses himself completely in romance. He showers his partner with constant declarations, clings to her presence, and makes her the center of his entire existence. At first it may seem sweet, but over time the excess becomes suffocating. His love turns into dependence. She begins to feel less admiration, more pressure. What once felt like devotion now feels like weakness. Now picture another man. He loves deeply but without losing himself. He doesn't need to remind his partner with words. Every hour his actions show it. He supports her, respects her, and stands by her, yet he maintains his independence. His love enhances who he is. It doesn't erase him. This balance is the Stoic ideal. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The best way to avenge yourself is not to become like the wrongdoer. In love, this means staying true to your virtue even when passion tempts you to act against your character." Epictetus echoed the same principle. Love freely, but don't chain your happiness to another's approval. The Stoic man hides not the fact that he loves, but the parts of love that are impulsive, needy, or excessive. He doesn't overwhelm his partner with emotional floods, nor does he expect her to carry the weight of his happiness. He knows love is a gift, not a right, and because of that, he treats it with gratitude, not entitlement. Think of relationships that last decades. What sustains them isn't constant drama or endless declarations, it's steady respect. Love grounded in reason, nurtured by loyalty, and tempered with self-sufficiency. A man who hides nothing, who declares every desperate fear of losing her, often ends up pushing her away. A man who loves calmly, showing his devotion through action, builds trust that endures. In modern life, we see the difference everywhere. One man checks his partner's phone constantly, demanding reassurance because he's terrified of losing her. Another man loves her freely, but never clings. If she stays, it's because she chooses to not, because he tried to trap her. Which man do you think she respects, the one who loves with strength, not fear? The Stoic approach to love is not about detachment, but clarity. It is about recognizing that love must never replace virtue. If being in love makes you compromise your values, lose your independence, or abandon reason, then it is no longer love, it is obsession. And obsession destroys respect. So what should a man hide? The desperation, the dependency, the illusion that his partner is his only source of worth. What he reveals is devotion that is steady, respectful, and free. He loves with his whole heart, but he never surrenders his self-mastery. A Stoic man understands this paradox. By not clinging too tightly, he actually loves more purely. His partner feels free, not trapped. She admires his strength, not his dependence. And that admiration allows love to grow deeper with time. In the end, love is not about losing yourself in another. It is about two whole people walking side by side, strong in themselves, stronger together. The Stoic man hides the weakness that begs and shows the strength that gives. That is the kind of love that endures. Conclusion. We've walked through 8 things a man must guard in silence. His weaknesses, mistakes, dreams, feelings, secrets, pains, pleasures, and even parts of his love. At first, this might sound like a life of hiding, but it's not about hiding, it's about mastering. The Stoics understood that a man's strength is measured not by what he shows the world, but by what he chooses to control within himself. Weakness becomes growth when carried with dignity. Mistakes become wisdom when owned in silence. Dreams become reality when acted on, not bragged about. Feelings become guides when tempered by reason. Secrets become sacred when kept with honor. Pain becomes strength when endured without complaint. Pleasures become joy when balanced by restraint. And love becomes lasting when it is steady, free, and rooted in respect. What you guard does not make you cold, it makes you dependable. It allows others, especially the woman beside you, to see not just your words, but your character. And in the end, character is all that endures. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. That is the heart of Stoicism. Don't broadcast your battles, fight them. Don't boast of your dreams, live them. Don't beg for respect, earn it quietly. Because the truth is simple, the strongest man is not the one who shows everything. It's the one who holds enough back to remain unshakable.